Endurance Icons, where we sit down with individuals excelling and inspiring in the wide world of endurance sports. We are your hosts, Jessica and Mark Cullen. Our guest today is Ultra-Runner Marianne Hogan. She has competed at 3 World Junior Triathlon Championships. Following that, she made the move to ultra-running, where she finished 3rd at Western States and 2nd at UTMB. She was recently voted number 3 for North American Trail Runner in 2022, and she's the Paralympic guide for triathlon at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, where she and her partner finished 5th place. Please give a warm welcome to Marianne. Marianne, we're so happy to have you on the show today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I'd love to talk about how you get started in the sport. So you have a very diverse background, and it seems like triathlon and ultra running are very different sports, even though from an outside observer who doesn't do an endurance sport, they both seem similar, systems. But what was your sport upbringing that brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually started as a swimmer and then kind of got introduced to triathlon via my swim team at a very early age. I think I did my first triathlon at age 8. And so I started doing triathlon quite a bit. I did them all the way through 18 years old, and that's kind of where I was on the junior national team for Canada. But it was always really a dream of mine to go study in an NCAA Division I school. My older brother had done it for tennis, and it was kind of just something that I wanted to do. And at the time in 2010 there wasn't any triathlon NCAA Division I sport. So I kind of had to pick something else, and I kind of went for track. Because I've always been attracted to running, and so I kind of transitioned sport there and really wanted to do that. So I ended up going to San Diego State University, where I ended up spending 5 years there because I also did my master's degree. And I did 5 years of track and field in San Diego, where I ran mostly the 10K distance. And at the end of that 5-year span, I still really, really enjoyed running, but I was really, really over anything that had to do with pace, very specific workouts and things like that. So I kind of just started running just for fun, kind of mindlessly, just going on runs and things like that. And quite quickly after that too, I moved to Boulder, Colorado, and it's an excellent place for trail running. And I kind of just fell in love with the community and the sport in general. And that's when I started really developing a love for trail running and got into it.
So jumping back a little bit to that early triathlon days and that national junior triathlon when you were kind of 16 to 19 years old, did you have some success there? Were there some favorite places you got to race during that time around the world?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it really built me into someone who's very kind of determined on certain goals and things like that. Because when you do triathlons, I feel like it's very easy to follow a structure, and you have to, because fitting in swimming, biking, and running is, you must fit in all 3 in order to be successful. So I think it really gave me a really good base. And so I really enjoyed it. I did my world championships. I think we went to Switzerland, Germany, and we had one actually in Vancouver, Canada. Oh. And that was amazing because it was just really fun to be part of the national team at that point. It was just, I think I did my first junior world championships at 16 years old, which is in the categories 16 to 19. So it was really good to kind of be part of that group. And it really kind of brought me more that sense of hard work and determination leads you to things like that. And I got that from an early age. So I'm happy that I went through those experiences.
And did you get to race against any prolific kind of triathlon names that are still kicking around today that we might recognize?
Yeah, there's quite a bit. I have to shout out to Paula Findlay. She was part of the junior national team when I was there. And it's really good to see her where she took her love for triathlon and kind of built it into the longer distances. So that's really nice. But, there's actually a lot of runners or triathletes that are still around that were there when I was doing it, just from across the world. I remember when we were in Vancouver, Ray St. Louis was the junior world champion, and now he's doing really well on the international circuit. So that's just an example, but I'm sure there's many names that are still around in the triathlon world.
Nice. We'll wait for your return to come back to it, and you can put them all up.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
I think you're doing pretty well in ultra running, so probably not ready to come back quite yet. So when did you exactly move over to kind of ultra running? Is there like a first race that you remember that was really you going full steam into ultras?
Yeah, I wasn't full steam, but I did my first trail race, and it was actually my first marathon. I did the Leadville Marathon up in Colorado, which is pretty high up. It's like 10,000 feet. And I actually ended up winning that trail race. And then when you win, then you get like they call it like a token. And then that gets you into the 50-mile race. And so that's how I got into the race. And that's kind of how I got into ultra running. And I really loved it, but I was super inexperienced and way too naive at first, which is pretty good. It's a good thing to be, but also it has its limits for sure.
So you won that. Like Leadville is a crazy spot to race, tough elevation, tough terrain, and you go out and win that your first time. Did you think you had a chance to win that race, or you were just going in for a good time? Like,
yeah, I was definitely going in for a good time. I had a couple friends doing it, and they were just like, "Hey, you want to come do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, for sure." I've always been somewhat, I guess, competitive in the different sports that I've done, but I had never done any trail race, so I didn't have any expectation and wasn't going in it to win it. It just happened that way, and I guess it kind of set the tone or kind of raised the bar of my own expectations for future races for sure.
and were you training out in like Boulder during that time? Like you were a little bit used to kind of the terrain and conditions a little bit, I gather?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Boulder is lower elevation than Leadville, but the terrain is similar. And yeah, I was kind of used to the conditions.
So were you doing some like specific ultra kind of training during that time that really set you up for that?
No, and that's quite interesting because I don't do anything. Even to this day, I'm really not someone who wants to do anything specific anymore. And I think that that's probably what helps me in the long run in the variability of the different races that I do. And I think that not many sports allow us to do that, but I think that ultra running does allow you that freedom, and I'm capitalizing on that for sure.
So I wanted to ask kind of what is it that you love so much about the ultras? I see on your like Instagram all the time, you're always like out in the mountains, like having a great time. So what is it really that you love about ultras and kind of the adventure of it?
Yeah, that's what I love about it. I feel like I love that, to be good in all. But it depends for who, but for me, what works really well for me is when I do long days and higher volumes but lower intensity. And so doing that allows me to be out there for longer. And so I feel like I'm just able to capitalize on everything, just long days that I really enjoy. And then that makes me a better ultra runner. And then the better I am, then the more that I want to be out there. And so I feel like it's kind of like a positive spiral turn, if you will. So yeah, I just like the fact that when you do ultras, you get to explore so much by foot. And I think that is such an amazing thing that we're able to do. And I love that I'm able to travel the world and visit all these spots by feet. And the longer that you're out there, the more that you can discover and explore. So that's really what I enjoy about it for sure.
And do you train mostly solo, or do you have like a group of friends or some individuals that join you for a lot of the training?
Yeah, I have a large group of friends and individuals who I like to train with. It depends where I am, obviously, because I travel quite a bit. And there are definitely some runs that I do by myself, and I think that'll just happen. But my long weekend adventures, I like to do them with people. I'm definitely more of a people's person than a solo runner for sure.
You're such an interesting mix that you often see in the very top performers. So often you think that if you're this elite or professional athlete, that you're 100% focused on competing and paces and times. But one of the things that I find in having conversations with people at the top level like you, there's this element of joy. Like you have so much fun. Even your Instagram header is, smiling and running my way through life. And you really do. Like everything is, you bring this component of joy. And I think I read somewhere that you even have a name for your group of friends that you run with. And it seems very playful and fun. But you also have this incredible side of you that is is very competitive because you are winning races and placing at the very top. So I'd love to unpack a little bit with you of what element of how important is that joy to you, and how much do you chalk your success up to the fact that you just truly love what you do?
Yeah, I think that there's a difference between like taking things seriously or doing things with seriousness. Like I think that I wake up every day and I make sure that I get the most training done just because I really want to, and that doesn't take away from the fact that I do train. But the fun aspect is always the number one priority for me, and that's kind of how I feel like I'm able to achieve these performances in terms of like when I show up at the start line of a race, I don't necessarily feel the pressure because I'm not necessarily there to perform. Of course, performing me allows me to be happier, and so it kind of trickles in eventually. But the sole purpose of me showing up at the start line isn't only to perform. And so I think that if we do things for the right reasons, then we're willing to do whatever it takes to make it to the finish line. And I think that for me, the main reason is to be out there and have some fun and deliver the best performance that I can deliver, because I know that that will make me happy, and that's what's important to me. And so I think that mindset really allows me to push through harder times when I am out there and things are a little bit more difficult, as opposed to maybe if I was doing it solely for the performance, then I think that would be definitely a switch in perspective.
And that makes sense to me. And your whole attitude and I guess the joy that you bring to running, it does show the pure love of it. I'm really fascinated when you start digging into the injuries that you've had, to look at the role of mindset, because I would imagine if someone who it's your community, it brings you a great deal of joy. It could feel devastating to have injury, and you've actually suffered from some fairly intense injuries. I believe 2017 you had a spiral fracture in your tibia and fibia, which took you out for a while, required surgeries. Talk to me about what those moments were when these injuries happened in your running, and how you overcame them, and sort of some of the tools that you used.
Yeah, I think to me, the biggest tool that I use is that I always remind myself that I find myself in a situation, and regardless of how I react to that situation, the situation is going to happen anyways. And so when I have a broken leg, for example, obviously I was upset and devastated, especially the first few days and even the first few weeks, to be honest, because it was quite the shock. But quickly you need to realize that me being upset about it for a longer period of time, or me being annoyed or negative about the whole situation, will not help me get out of it. And so I always, when something happens to me like that, because I've had a lot of things happen to me in the past years, I always allow myself kind of like 2 to 3 days to kind of grieve and kind of be like upset about it. And I usually allow myself to show that to the people that I'm very close to. I think it's important to voice out certain things, like just say that like this really sucks and I'm really upset. And but eventually, you get those emotions out and you move on. And I think that that's very important. And that's helped me tremendously in the past 2 years. So I think that that's the main tool that I have in my toolbox. But I also think that there's 2 ways to look at it. I can live today and be annoyed at the fact that my right leg is still bothering me and I still am living the consequences of that break. But I can also enjoy the fact that it's brought me a better appreciation for running. I think that probably I am very, very happy when I get to run, because there's a lot of times in the last 5 years that I wasn't able to run. So I just think that that's definitely something more. And I could go on and on, but the last reason I'll say is that I also think that it's making me a better person, a better athlete every time that I get injured, because mentally I have to work through this situation that is going on. And so it's like an extra also tool in my toolbox that I can use whenever if something happens to me during a race, which it always seems like it is happening, UTMB being a prime example of when I tore my psoas, and obviously I had to react to that, and I was just prepared and I was just ready to push through it, because it's something that I had experienced before.
Did you know, so I want to unpack UTMB with you a little bit, but when that happened, it was in the last, 40 kilometers of this enormous race.
Yeah.
Did you know that it was something serious? Or, you mentioned it's like a knife through your leg. When did it hit you, and sort of what was your mindset? Because I don't think, knowing your mindset, that quitting was not an option.
No, no, it's really interesting actually, because a lot of people asked me after UTMB, like, how did you not quit, or why didn't you quit? And the interesting thing is that the thought of quitting never crossed my mind. It was just, I had to make it to the finish line, and I had to make it the quickest way possible, because when I first starting to feel the pain, I was still leading UTMB, and that was quite the pill to swallow, to realize that, I was feeling very, very good, and things, 2 minutes before the pain started occurring, I was in a very, very positive mindset. And I thought that, I was kind of feeling on top of the world. And then this happened, and quickly you have to realize that, okay, well, this is happening, but I have to keep moving. I have to keep moving. And to me, I just wanted to make it to the finish line. And again, like, the fact of me breaking my leg years before, when I broke my leg, and if I had broken my leg at UTMB, there is absolutely no way that I would have dragged my body to the finish line, because I would have been unable to. Like, I would have been physically unable to get there. And now I was dealing with another type of pain, which was, I would say, even more painful than the leg, but just in a different manner. But I was still able to take one step forward. And so for me, it was just a matter of, as long as I can keep putting one step in front of the other, I'm going to keep going. And I'm going to try to do that as quickly as possible. And it is quite heartbreaking. Like, to me, that the part that I found the hardest was at UTMB, was walking. Like, there was like one downhill that I was in so much pain that I could not run at all. And I was just walking, and that, that was very, very difficult. And then I started getting passed by all these guys as well. So it was quite difficult, but I just kept reminding myself that, I fought so hard to be there, and I was still able to keep moving forward. So I was just going to do that until I reached the finish line. And it's kind of interesting, because you black out, like, you kind of just don't remember that you don't remember the pain that you're going through. Like, when you make it to Chamonix and you're running through the town, like, it's as if, like, everything before kind of gets eliminated, and you're just, like, so happy to be there. And it's kind of interesting to me when I'm looking at videos of myself in Chamonix, because I'm like, man, that was so painful, but yet I'm smiling and I'm, like, having the best time. So it's kind of like, it's kind of interesting to see it from the exterior after,
It really is. And I'd love to know, you overcame such a tremendous amount. We've maybe talked about some of the low points of the race, but what was some of the high points of this race, to have such a tremendous result at such a world-class event?
Yeah, it was really nice, because I think it was really nice for me, because it took me so long for me to even just reach the start line, and it took me 5 years of thinking to myself, and only me believing, because I don't have a coach, or I have friends and families, of course, that they believe in me, but it's not the same thing as me believing in myself and thinking that eventually I would be able to do something that I'm proud of. And so my point is, like, all this buildup makes it that when you're in the race and things are going so well, like, you're just feeling these emotions that are, like, wildly positive, and it's hard to describe the feeling that you're feeling, because you can't really conceptualize it. When I took the lead of UTMB, I was feeling so good that it felt as though I had not run, like, was when I took the lead, it was like, it might have been kilometer, I don't remember quite. It might have been kilometer 120, but it felt as though I had just started running, and I was feeling really, really great. So I just think what I really like about ultra running as well is that your mind and your body are like two separate entities, and, like, obviously sometimes they work together, but sometimes they work completely apart. And I think that that's really interesting to see how that works in an ultra, and when your body is failing, then yeah, you can switch to your mind, and when your mind is failing, then you switch to your body. And I think that that's really cool.
It would be very remarkable if we could bottle up your mindset, because I think you have a really, really impressive one, especially when you look, jumping backwards a little to a race that happened earlier last year, was Western States. I understand you came into that with nausea. So, like, to be feeling ill before you even start, and then also you had some back pain, and to not count yourself out and to come in third. I'd love to hear a little bit from you of what was that like? What was sort of the battle internally, to come out the other side with a podium finish?
Yeah. So I came in with the back pain, but I didn't come in with the nausea. The nausea came in a little further down. But
Oh,
the
lucky
back, yeah.
you.
The back pain is very interesting because for the whole month, so the Western States is around, I think it was June 25th, and I started having back pain in the first week of June, to the point where like I was having trouble like tying my shoes because I had like a hot or like a hard, like I don't know what happened, but I like it's as if something like got stuck in my back, and I do think that it's related to the injury that I had at UTMB, but my point is, in the month leading up to Western States, like the weeks prior to that, I was feeling amazing. But then all of a sudden, I had to take like almost 2 weeks completely off. Um, so even though I was feeling very, very confident because I felt like my training had been going really well and I was feeling very good, I had absolutely no idea how my back pain would react. And on top of that, it was my first 100 miles, so I had no idea how I would do with the 100 mile race. Um, and the nausea came in, and I just started thinking, like, man, this is the worst place to be starting to have nausea. Like, I was just thinking, like, I can't believe that I've worked so hard, and like, I've finally achieved. I was finally able to get a shot at like the race of my dreams because I always wanted to race Western States, and then I have nausea. Like, I just felt so. I felt like it was such a stupid thing to have, I guess. But the great thing is about ultra, and I think that that's true about life too, is that whenever you're going through something bad, like as long as you keep moving forward, you're making progress. And for me, that's really what kept me alive. I was feeling very nauseous. I was throwing up like crazy, and I like couldn't absorb anything. I was super dehydrated, but I kept moving forward, and eventually. Like the feeling just passed. Like the last time that I threw up, I feel like I threw up everything that I had in my system, and then whatever was bothering me just kind of like faded away. And of course, I still had to work on my hydration and nutrition and everything like that. But eventually, I was able to get back on track of feeling a little better. But I'm still like 100K into a race, so I'm not feeling amazing. But my point is just, in a long race like that, or just if you're going through anything, just realize that you moving forward is better than you not moving at all. And that's really what brought me to a third place finish. Because if I had decided, like with my nausea, that I was just going to stop, then I would have been so far back that when I finally felt better, I would have never caught up to the third place finish. Whereas it was interesting too, because when the nausea stopped for me, then I think that the conditions were incredibly hard. So then it started being hard for everyone. So now then we were kind of like on the same level. And I don't know, eventually I made it to the finish and I was in third place. And I honestly, I could not believe that I was in third place, because I felt like I had the worst race of my life. I had never had such a thing happen to me in the race before.
Wow. I'd love to jump in a little bit to what training kind of looks like, both training and the pieces around training to kind of get to the highest level and stay durable and continue to perform. So when you look at kind of your average training week, call it, do you track like first kind of the number of hours you're doing, and also is it just pure running, or are you doing a number of like cross training type of things as well?
Yeah, I like cross training, and I think that cross training is a great way for me to make sure that I don't run too much. That's my main problem, is that I do too much and then I get injured, and then I pay the price for a few weeks / months. So for me, what I mostly try to do is keep track of my weekly volume. That seems to be a good thermometer in terms of like my health. For running, I feel like my body starts breaking down up to when I reach a certain level. And I've noticed that in the past few years, and I've done a much better job at tracking that. I used to not track it at all, and then I would just get injured and then not really know what would cause it. But in reality, it was always the same thing. It's just that I wasn't really tracking it. So now what I do on a weekly basis, I make sure that I am under a certain threshold. And if I am above, then I need to make sure that I have absolutely zero pain, and that everything else is going really well. And by everything else, I mean sleep, I mean nutrition. I think that recovery is super important the more training you put in. But I like to do a lot of cross training whenever I reach that weekly volume that I've done. Then, for example, in the winter, I'm a huge believer in, so I do split board, but I'm a huge believer of going up the ski mountain. And in the summer, I'm a big believer of biking. Swimming, I like too, but I prefer swimming in lakes. Like I kind of lost the joy of swimming in the swimming pool. I understand that for people it's still fun, but like when you're not part of a swim club, it's kind of more difficult to just go in a swimming pool and and pull out a swim workout. So I like swimming in lakes or biking and like gravel biking, things like that. And I do a lot of gym workouts in the gym. In the gym, it's mostly to prevent injuries for sure.
Yeah, so when I followed you on Strava for a little while, so I see like a lot of times you're averaging kind of up in that like 160K a week. Is most of that running like on trails pretty much predominantly, or do you spend some time road running, doing speed work or anything like that?
Yeah, I try. So that's the thing too. When I do volume and speed at the same time, that's the second thing that gets me injured. So if I do high volume, then I don't do any intensity. And if I do intensity, then I don't do high volume. And so I feel like for me, and I think that that's very personal for a lot of people. I think that some people will be able to do that, but I just can't. I can't really explain why. I feel like my body kind of just breaks down after a certain point. And I've done it, and sometimes I'll push the envelope, but I just know that I can't push the envelope too many weeks at a time. And I think everyone really needs to figure out what is their like threshold for both of those things. But I think that if you play with volume and you play with intensity, you should definitely keep track of where you're putting that lever, because it will have an impact for sure. So to answer your questions, I do intensity sometimes, but I try to reduce my volume. I live in Montreal, so I don't always run in trails, and now there's snow everywhere. So honestly, if I run in the trail or on the street, it doesn't change much. But on the weekends, usually I get out of the city and I go train on the trails for sure. But during the week, I don't really mind if I'm in the streets or in the trails.
Where are some of those favorite spots you like to go around Montreal for some of your training?
So I really like Mont Tremblant, which is a little further north. Otherwise, I like Vermont. I grew up just on the border of Vermont, so I really like going up there as much for skiing as I do for running. We like going up to the White Mountains in New Hampshire for sure. And then the Adirondacks are pretty close. And then there's other mountains in Quebec as well. Like up, if you go closer to Quebec City, there's a lot. And I have a lot of friends out there, so I make it out there for sure. I like to switch it up. I like to go different places. And I think that also allows you to kind of be more comfortable in different terrains or different types of grades of mountains and things like that.
Is there some favorite like training destinations you like to go to base camp out of, or when you're going for those, is it more just like tacking that on to a race you're doing there, or is there some specific places you really like to go?
No, I always go back to Boulder, Colorado. Like I lived for 3 years in Boulder, so I really like to go back there to do different types of training. But around here, I mean, whenever I leave for the weekend, I don't just go for one day. I go for like 2 days, and it has nothing, or 3 nights, or 3 days, but 2 nights. But I like to switch it up. Like I won't always go to the same place. I think Vermont will be the place that I will go to the most, like repeatedly, just in terms of like its proximity and its variability, especially I guess winter or summer.
Awesome. And some other details around training. So you mentioned you do some strength training in there as well. Another piece a lot of our high-level athletes are really huge on is both the nutrition and recovery side of things too. What are some of the things that you focus on in those areas to make sure you're performing at your best and recovering?
Yeah, I think that I've grown a lot in terms of nutrition. So I used to be, like I said, I did 5 years of track and triathlon, and I think that the rhetoric there, and I've never had specific issues, but I feel like just the climates and the environment of those two sports make it that you believe strongly that smaller is better, skinnier is better, and I think that I was a much skinnier athlete and a much, I guess, just smaller individual, and that wasn't really working for me because I feel like that's not where my body finds itself in a natural state, and so I'm saying this because during those times I was more, I'd say, dieting or making sure that I don't overeat, whereas now I do the complete opposite. I feel like if I don't eat enough, then I find myself with injuries, and if I'm injured, then I can't race, and if I can't race, then that's not fun because it also means that I can't run. So I make sure that, especially when I have big training weeks and things like that, I eat a lot and I eat more variety, which is different for sure than what I've done in the past. And I think that if I had to go back and talk to my 16-year-old self, then I would tell myself that I think the body is made that you don't. The body is made for it to find its natural state, especially if you're training at the level that I was training at that age. And I think that that is something that we should keep emphasizing and keep promoting within our communities.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, that's so impactful and I would say brave of you, because it's not easy just to flip that switch, especially when you're learning that you're performing better when you're eating more. But there's also that cultural pressure, especially within sports, to keep athletes as light as possible. What were some of the things that you did to make sure that you got on that path and sort of held yourself accountable to doing what you needed to perform at that level?
Yeah, so I had quite a bit of stress fractures in my past. Like, I don't even know how many, and that's to tell you how many of them there were. And I do think that, when you think about it, I think in the now that I'm years removed from that time, I realized that that was probably the main factor, is that I was not giving my body enough nutrition and enough energy to sustain the workouts that I was doing. And now it's just something that I really stay away from. And even it's like the opposite. At the end of the day, I'm trying to I'm not calculating, but I'm trying to think like, okay, did I eat enough today to sustain like everything that I did? And can I go to bed now, or should I eat more? It's kind of like the reverse. And so that's the first thing, is really just to make sure that you do the right thing. But I also think it's about, I think unfortunately, I'm definitely something that doesn't give in much to the social pressures, but I think that there is something to be said about social pressures in terms of weight. The way that you look as a runner, and the way that you should look as a triathlete, as a track athlete, or as a distance runner. And I think in the end, we need to realize that we are all our own bodies, and I am made a little differently. And if you look at me, at first you're not necessarily thinking, I'm a different form. And I think that it took me a little bit of time to realize that I just need to not focus on that, but focus more on the workouts that I'm doing, the trainings that I'm doing, how I'm feeling during those workouts. And more than anything, am I waking up and am I having pain in different areas? And if the answer is no, then I'm doing pretty good and I can keep going. And so I think that the triggers for me that allowed me to kind of move on was to realize that, it is an issue. Like, I was having a lot of injuries, and so that was something for me. And I understand that I wish that people don't let it get to that point. That's why I'm talking about it. I hope that not everyone will change, or if you're going through something similar, that you're not just waiting for an injury for you to make that change, because unfortunately, most likely an injury will come if you're not taking care of your body. But I do think that was, like, for me, that was the eye opening, and obviously it helps to have people kind of open those those eyes for you in terms of like, hey, like we probably think that you should reconsider either your training or your nutrition, so that you make sure that you are in a healthy state.
You can definitely tell that you're a coach as well. It sounds like the same messages that I'm giving to my athletes all the time. So I love it. We'll hop a little more into the coaching convo as we go along here. With another piece on nutrition there, to fuel a large ultra event like this, and a long distance one, when we talk about during your ultras, whether it's your training or racing, is there some certain products that you use during those races, or are there so many like fun things that the listeners might that you like put in your needs bags along the way that kind of get you excited to get to that next spot? What are some of those things that you use?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I have a nutrition partner, and it's NAC Bars, and they make really, really good products. That kind of they have a wide variety of products that allow me to kind of get fueled for the long run. And one that is like a staple now is the nutrition hydration mix. Because it's really easy to put in your bottles, and you get 250 calories within like one flask, which is huge. And it's not just carbs. There's also protein and some electrolytes, fats in there. So that really helps to kind of have that as a staple. I'm a big fan of their waffles as well. Like that's super easy to carry as well because they're very light. Um, but I think that for me and people kind of know and joke about this about me is that I drink Coke during races, and I drink quite a bit of it, and to the point where people think that I shouldn't be drinking so much Coke. So there's a little bit of controversy there, but I think like at the end of the day, it works for me, and it gives me energy, and it makes me happy, and it kind of keeps my stomach okay. And for some other people, I understand that it doesn't work, but I think that that's probably the funniest thing is that, like, for example, at UTMB, I reached for Coke at kilometer 30, and that is a big no-no for a lot of people. But it works for me. So, I mean, I don't need to change a recipe just because it doesn't work for other people.
I love that. And the fact that the race is over 24 hours, I mean, you were almost under 24 hours, but that's a long time to be on your feet. So the Coke gives you the caffeine, and that coupled with adrenaline is probably why you were able to perform at such a high level. So I love that. If
Yeah.
it works for you, keep it going.
Yeah, exactly.
As triathletes, we definitely know the magic of Coke late in a race. It can bring you back to life and carry you to that finish line.
Yeah.
So we,
Yeah.
yeah, a vote for Coke here as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. So finishing up kind of some of those pieces around training as well, is there some things you really focus on in terms of recovery to make sure that you can come back day after day and do, like on Strava, you're doing 24 hours of running during like a week of training, plus all the other things you're doing. What do you focus on from recovery to make sure you can keep performing?
Like I said, I really do think nutrition is number one. I think sleep is super important, and is definitely something that I need to work on. Because I do a lot of stuff. I do train a lot. I work full time. I'm a coach. And so at the end of the day, sometimes I go to bed later than I wish I did, and I wake up earlier just because I want to make sure that I get the training in. So I want to focus more on that in 2023 and beyond. But, we're always a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of recovery, I try to get treatment. That is also something that I've changed a lot in the last few years, is that I make sure to get frequent treatment, massage and a chiropractor. I have a partner chiropractor here in Montreal, and she gets hands-on treatment on me a lot. And I think that will help me a lot moving forward. I have a physio as well, who I communicate a lot. I think that recovery is important. Like an important component of recovery is making sure that those little knacks and pains that you have left and right, that you're understanding what they are and what are the exercises you need to do in order to make sure that they are not repeated offenses. And so there's a lot of that I do, and I think that helps in my recovery process.
That's great. So you talked about some of those professionals around you that are helping you kind of get to the start line and stay injury free. One thing we're really noticing as we talk to these high level athletes is it really takes like a community and a number of people and brands around them to really allow them to perform at their best. Talk to us a little bit about some of the great like companies and sponsors you work with. You talked about NAC a little bit, but I know you're like a Solomon athlete. Why do you have you chosen those companies or partners to work with?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been with Solomon since I started trail running in 2017. I think that I was part of an ultra running camp, and I got selected along with my very good friend Mathieu to keep going with them. And that was years ago. And what I love about the brand is that, I was injured for 5 years, and they never even talked about dropping me as an athlete per se. Like, I understand that I was not part of the international team, but that means a lot to me. I'm a very loyal person, and I want to be very loyal to the brand that I represent, just because I believe in their product. I believe in their team, and I believe in what they stand for. So that was very important for me inside, after the year that I've had, moving forward, and knowing that those brands that I want to work with, NAC, of course, for nutrition, is a very similar situation. I started with them earlier on. They really believed in me, and they now, what I love about them is that they are developing a whole gamut of products, which is, I think, super important in terms of ultra running, because you don't want to have just one gel or like just gels, for example. Or I think that it's very important to have everything. NAC just came out with their peanut butter, just to give you an example of the different things that they're coming out with, which I think is very exciting. Obviously, I have other partners. Cieli is the hat brand that I work with. They are made out of Montreal, or they were founded in Montreal, and they have a huge community out here, and I'm all about that community spirit. Love the hats, of course. I have a partner in St. Paul, so Lecky. I think that they absolutely saved my life at UTMB. I don't know that I would have made it down the mountain without those poles. So it makes sense for me to have a partner in terms of batons. And then for like I said, for those companies that take care of me here in Montreal, I'm dealing with one company that's called Action Sport Physio, which delivers physiotherapy. And then Parc Santé, which is another Montreal-based shop that provides me with chiropractic care, and that helps me a lot, and is conveniently located at like 100 meters from my house, so that helps as well.
You can roll over there in your sweatpants.
Yeah, I do think that's the one advice I'll give, is that like you have to make life easy for you. If going to get treatment, like you're forced to go like all the way out of the city, like you're not going to do it on a daily basis, and then there's no point. Like you have to figure out a situation that works and that makes it easy. So
yeah, consistency is important. So if it's not easy, you're not going to be consistent, and then you're not going to
exactly
do all the things you're supposed to do. But
mm-hmm.
Holy smokes, you have an incredible team around you, and you're going to need it going into 2023, because it looks like you had a huge year in 2022, but it looks like you're trying to top it. I'd love to talk us through some of the key things that you have on the roster for 2023, and maybe some of the things we're most excited about.
Yeah, I'm most excited to get back out there. After UTMB, I was at least 4 months without running. I was a lot of time actually without doing anything, which at first it was good to have some rest, but pretty quickly there I got very antsy. So I'm very excited to get back out there. Slowly but surely, with adequate treatment, I'm able to get more consistent training. But to be honest, I'm getting just in time training here, because I'm going to Costa Rica here in 2 weeks now. That's my first event of the season. I'm doing the Coastal Challenge, which I've always wanted to do. It's a stage race in Costa Rica. I'm pretty excited about it. It's not like myself to be nervous, but for the first time, I'm a little nervous, just because, like I said, I'm kind of pushing the envelope here, and I'm realizing that I'm pushing the envelope. So I just want to make sure that, I make good decisions that will allow me to do the rest of the things I want to do in 2023. So that will kind of be my mindset for this race, is making sure that I get out of it healthy. Because 2023 will be similar in some ways to 2022, but I hope to make things better. I've been working really hard to kind of figure out the things that were still going wrong with me in terms of, since I broke my leg, my right leg is very small. I can't use it as good as my left, and for like shorter distances, I think that I was able to get by, but at UTMB definitely was not able to get by. So I just want to make sure that I'm fixing those issues so that they don't happen in the future. And that's why I want to go back and give it my best effort. Western States, I am wanting to go back just because it's Western States for sure, but also because I'd rather go into it without a back pain and without nausea this time, I hope. Just to try to see what the whole experience can be, but with different circumstances. And then UTMB, and I'm doing those two races again, and I realized that, a lot of people could say, for example, that, it was difficult for my body the first time. Why am I putting myself through that a second time? But I also take it as an opportunity. Not a lot of people are allowed into Western States, and I don't want to take that opportunity for granted. But running UTMB is very special as well. So I want to make sure that I go back out there and give it an effort that I feel proud about. But most of all, I just want to make sure that I'm having fun through all of this. And if I end up running Western States and I feel like I'm not ready for UTMB, then I'll just make an executive decision then. But that's kind of where I align myself for 2023. And then projects that I've added to the agenda that I haven't mentioned. I'm doing the speed project, which is really fun. I'm actually part of a Solomon team, and we are comprised of women from across the world, from different backgrounds, different kind of running backgrounds, which will make the full experience enjoyable. For those that don't know the speed project, it's a race that goes from Los Angeles to LA. LA to Las Vegas, and you have to decide your own route to get there. And it's kind of like an unsanctioned race, which will be a lot of fun. It will be more of an adventure than a race. And then I'm doing the Boston Marathon just for fun with my brother, who is also qualified. So I'm going to see how long I can hold on to him.
That sounds like the most fun year ever. I know
Yeah.
we did the virtual speed project during COVID when they opened it up as for everyone, and even
nice.
not actually doing the event, but doing it virtually, we had fun. So I can only imagine the blast you're going to have, especially with the Solomon team.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
should be fun.
I know that we've talked a little bit about your coaching, and I'd like to dive into that and talk to us a little bit about how you started. The athletes that you coach, and maybe your coaching philosophy.
Yeah, for sure. So I coach for an organization that also I'm partnering with in terms of a runner. It's called the Running Clinic. And they purchased this other coaching business, and that's called the coaching of the runners. I don't even know how we say it in English, to be honest. It's called le coaching du coureur. But so I work with them, and I work with a lot of different types of athletes, that trail athletes, most likely. So trail runners that do anywhere from like a 20K all the way through 100 miles. And I started working with them 5 years ago now. Actually, when I moved back to Canada is when I started working with them. And originally, the idea was to pair up athletes or aspiring athletes in a certain way with beginner trail runners, and so to help kind of build a community around different types of runners in Quebec. So that's kind of how I got started. When we started, we were like 2 or 3 coaches, and I was one of them. Now there's a lot more. And I really enjoy it because it allows me to kind of contribute to the sport in a different manner than just being an athlete. I love running because you get to meet different types of people. People that you don't necessarily get to interact with if it's not for running. Like, for example, like, I don't know, I love the idea that you get to meet like doctors, lawyers, or engineers, like just people that, if you're not working with them, if they're not your friends, or you're not going to interact with them. And so I get to work with all types of different individuals with different situations. People, some of them have families. They're trying to fit in workouts to be able to do, complete their first ultra marathons. Other people are trying to complete 100 miles. So I like to very individualize people's workouts. And I aligned much better with athletes that are not focused on numbers, because I'm not very focused on numbers. I'm more focused on the experience and the goals that people want to do, and make sure that they are finding it fun, and that they are doing the training. And I try to provide a plan that works for them and will allow them to reach their goals in a fun manner. So that's kind of how I build workouts for my athletes. I'm definitely not someone who will focus on like VO2 or pacing or anything like that. So that's kind of my approach. I kind of use my own personal approach into my coaching as well.
So you're not just blood lactate testing them on every workout. That's all the rage these days.
Yep. No.
I want to jump over to your Olympic experience that you had for paratriathlon. How did you get set up with Jessica? What was kind of your path, and kind of what did the training and getting synced up with her look like on the way to the Olympics? And then we can dive into the Olympics itself.
Yeah, for sure. So when I broke my leg in 2018, it took me a really long time to recover. In May of 2019, I was like jogging, but barely, but kind of lacking a goal, or like, I still had a job and I was still able to like move a little bit. I was going to the gym, I was running a little bit, but I was lacking kind of like this ambition of working towards something. And it just so happened that someone that I knew connected me with actually a girl that was part of the elite team, or part of the elite team when I was a junior in Triathlon Canada days, and she is now the head coach of the Paralympic team. And they were looking for a guide. And to be a guide in triathlon, you cannot be a athlete for yourself, so you can't be like on the ITU circuit. And so they weren't that many people in 2019 that had like a triathlon background that are still active, because you still have to be in pretty good shape, because you're on the front of the bike, you're swimming with the athlete, you're running with the athletes. And they were looking for new guides, so we just got connected. And like a week later, I was in Victoria and I was doing like a time trial for a bike. And then they sent me to Hawaii and then Japan to follow Jessica, because it ended up working out. So it all trickled down very quickly. And originally I had signed on to be a guide all the way through 2020. And I thought like, that's perfect, because it'll allow me to kind of get back into shape. And so I was doing a lot of swimming, biking, and running. But then, obviously, as we all know, COVID hit and 2020 never happened, and 2020 became 2021. And so I actually decided to stay on, obviously, to support Jess all the way through her Paralympic journey. But it did obviously deter my return into trail running. But it was absolutely worth it. And if you want to talk about the Paralympics, then yeah, for sure, we can talk about that too.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about it. Just the whole experience, maybe your lead up to it, how you guys kind of got like in sync to make sure that you had such a great performance. Like you came 5th at the Paralympics. That's amazing. Tell me about the whole experience.
Yeah, it was a very good experience. I think that, it was one of the best experiences of my life for sure. In the sense of, it wasn't just the work that we were doing, but kind of just like the whole experience, in meaning that it's really opened up my eyes to realize how important communication is with different people. I think sometimes you take things for granted, and you don't realize how important your words are when you're speaking with someone. And like, so with Jessica, for example, she is completely blind, but she is also deaf in one ear. So communicating with her was very important, and I had to be kind of precise and and not kind of turn around the subject a lot of the time. So I think that really helped me in my own communication standards. But it also opened up, my perspective on life as a whole. Like, I think that it was really nice, because Jessica is a super positive person and she's very happy, and like we were traveling the world together, and she's super dependent of me. Like, I'm her guide in these places. Like in Japan, I have to, she can't go out by herself. Obviously, she didn't have her guide dogs, and we would go to these places. So it was very, very fun, and the whole team was just a blast. Like, I got pretty close with the rest of the Paralympic team. I spent almost 2 full years of my life with them, traveling the world, and going to the Paralympics was pretty interesting. Like, it was really fun to get out there in Japan and experience it all from the inside, I guess.
That's amazing. I can only imagine the bond that you would build with Jessica and even just the rest of the team. But then to have that level of communication and reliance probably on each other, because together you're one team. I think that's so incredible. And what an adventure for both of you.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd love to know where you're drawing your inspiration right now. Whether that's, a book or the music you're listening to, or maybe a mantra that you say while you're out running, but where are you drawing inspiration, especially when things get tough?
I like to draw inspiration from the people around me. Obviously, I think that there's a lot of greats in this world that we can be inspired by, but I think it's much more motivating for me to draw inspiration from the people that I see on a daily basis, because we all have something great to share with the world, and I think that there's something great in everyone that we can take from. So that's kind of what I like to do is go about the world thinking that everyone can be a mentor to you, and that's kind of where I draw my inspiration. But most of all, it's super simple, but I like to go to bed at night thinking that I did everything that I could to make it the most rewarding day. Like sometimes it's not the best day. I understand that we all go through situations sometimes that you're not like, yeah, today was the best day ever, you know. Every day can't be the best day ever, but I like going to bed at night thinking that I did a lot of things that had either made me a better person or a better athlete. So that's kind of how I like to go about my days.
Well, that, learning more about you today, that makes complete sense. And, we invited you on because you're an endurance icon to us, but I'd love to know, digging in further, the fact that you draw inspiration from other people. Who's your endurance icon?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, like I said, I like to draw inspiration from the people around me, and the person that I'd like to name today, his name is Mathieu. He's one of my closest friends, and he happened to get second at UTMB this year. Pushing the great Kylian Jornet. And of course, like Kylian is super inspirational, but I really love to see people around us achieving great things, and we need to realize that we're all able to do these kinds of things. And I think that Mathieu is a great example of that. He started running like 5 years ago and rose to the top. So I really like that type of story. And to me, the most important thing for sure, when I'm looking at icons is I want to make sure that I want to draw inspiration from people who do it for the right reasons, like not only to be at the top, but be happy at the top. Because I personally don't think that there's a reason to be at the top if it doesn't make you happy. I don't think we were all made to be on this world to be at the top. But I think that there's something to be said about just being happy in general. And so I draw a lot of inspiration from people that have fun in the process and are able to get their best selves out there. So I think Mathieu is a great example of that, and that's why I want to use him as an example, because he makes sure that on the day-to-day basis he's having a good time too, while also making him into the best person he can be, for sure.
Well, I can't think of a better sentiment to end our conversation today. Thank you so much. It's been a total pleasure to get to know you a little bit more and hear about all the incredible things that make up Marianne.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Wow. How great was that? I always learned so much from these endurance icons. If you enjoyed the podcast as well, please consider liking us across social media, subscribing to us on YouTube, or giving us a 5-star rating on wherever you listen to your podcasts. We appreciate you and your support so much. We wish you happy training, and we'll see you back next week.